Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name's Kevin May. I'm the editor and co-founder of Tnooz.com. Welcome to another one of our webinars, this time produced in association with RKG, that's the Rimm Kaufman Group. And we're looking today, excellent topic, discovering traveller intent through social and search. So, and we've probably been a little bit guilty of this at Tnooz over the last couple of years, but for some time the industry has been talking about the demise of search and the rise of social media. The travel industry is not alone in that. Social and search affect almost every industry vertical. But really, search is probably not dead at all. It's just evolved into what we think is a really kind of exciting phase. So what we're going to do over the next 60 minutes or so with our two panelists this afternoon, which we'll get to in a moment, is really kind of look at how these two are kind of starting to come together and what you can do as travel businesses to take advantage of that. So like I said, I'm Kevin May. I'm joined behind the scenes as always by Quinn, who's the CEO of Tnooz and my business partner. He's also a co-founder. He acts today as our glamorous producer, twiddling the knobs and pressing the buttons. And also, I'm delighted to joining us today is Ryan Gibson. He's the Executive Vice President for Marketing Strategy at RKG, and alongside him is Sarah Kennedy Ellis, who's a Director at Sabre and an occasional contributor to Tnooz.com as one of our glamorous nodes. So what our guys are going to be doing, as I said, is over the next 55 minutes or so is going through some of these issues, and we hope you'll come out at the end of it with really understanding a little bit more than what we've probably been used to over the years, which is its SEO and its pay-per-click, and in that other silo is social media, and how these two are coming together. So, as always, we have a bit of housekeeping to do first of all. We will be recording the entire webinar for you this afternoon, and that recording, along with all the slides, will be up on Tnooz.com. Usually we aim for within 12 hours or so. We will have a Q&A at the end of the presentations, so you can send in questions to our panel this afternoon very simply by pressing the questions button, which should be on the right-hand side of your dashboard there. Send those questions in, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. And then finally, we intersperse the event today with a series of polls, as many of you regular attendees will know. So, a quick familiarisation one first of all, so just so that you can get used to the system. And it's very simple. I hope it's very simple. Where are you located? And you have 4 options this afternoon. So if you can quickly answer those, and then just to make sure that you're all aware of what we're doing with the polls. That's great. You can see those votes coming in. So if you want to throw up the results of that too, that would be great. Okay. The results are 71% is North America. Not a huge surprise. It's such a large number of schools are still on holiday here in Europe. Lots of people on annual leave, but still just over 1 in 5 of you are in Europe. Very low from Asia Pacific, not least because it's late evening and almost in the middle of the night, and 5% of you are in Latin America. Right, now let's get down to our proper questions. So our second poll this afternoon is as follows. If you can throw up that second poll. Right, how important is search marketing to your brand in 2013 compared to 2009? We think it's markedly different, but how are you as businesses thinking about it? So you've got 3 options there. More important today, about the same as 2009, less important as 2009. Okay, and just a couple more seconds there, and then we'll get the results of that poll up. Okay, let's have the results there, Jean, please. Okay, so how important is search marketing? It's more important today. Just 81% of you overwhelmingly say it's more important today. 15% say it's about the same as it was 4 years ago, and just 3% say it's less important. I'm not sure whether I'm surprised or not. We'll probably get round to some of these issues later on, but thank you very much to everybody for voting. And without further ado, I'm very pleased to welcome Ryan Gibson. As I said earlier, is the EVP for Marketing Strategy at RKG. He'll be joined later on by Sarah Kennedy Ellis. But first of all, Ryan, good afternoon from me in the UK. You're in Charlottesville in Virginia in the US. Good morning then, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thanks so much, Kevin. I appreciate that. Great for Grateful for you having us here, and thanks, Sarah, for joining us today. So, yeah, search marketing, it's good to see that everyone finds that it's more important than it was, or they're placing more value on it than even 3 years ago. I think that a lot more attention has to be paid. The engines keep us guessing, and there's always changes being made, and so that's one of the fortunate things for us, RKG. We're an online marketing agency focused on consulting services and technology for kind of all things data-driven online, so paid search and SEO and social, and that's kind of where we're coming from on this. So if we take a look at the next slide, we can talk about how, you'll see how we're going to talk a little bit about really what we're going to talk about today. And you know, search and social really is coming together more than ever before, and understanding some ways that you can leverage that is important. And so hopefully we'll show you a couple ways that search isn't dead, and why you still need to be paying attention to that organic side of the business. And really, in order to start bringing search and social together, you kind of have to step back a little bit. You have to start to think about your audience and your goals, and use the data that you're receiving from that audience to drive the content. And it kind of becomes this circular function of using the data from your audience, what they want, understanding their tasks and desires, and being able to create more content for them. So hopefully by the end of this conversation, the question won't be search or social. It's going to be more about search and social and how I can start to bring those together. So next slide, please. And so when we look here, you know, I think a lot of people have taken a look at this, and we talk about how that it is a fact that the search engine results page, or SERP, as I'll occasionally refer to it, has less organic real estate today. So you look at the top and you look at the right-hand rail, and you see that that's all paid listings, and this all varies depending on what the search is that you do. And so, but what's important here is that if you move to the next slide, when you scroll down the page in this example, we actually have there are still a significant number of social listings. If you can scroll to the next slide, please. Excuse me, organic listings. And so there is still people are still scrolling beyond the paid listings. There are still groups of people that click exclusively on the organic listings. And so if you click the next slide, you can see that the organic listings are all there on the left, and you see different variants of that. And so next slide, please. One of the ways that we can highlight this, and this is a tool that we look at, it's called Blueprint, and it takes a look, this is a screen grab of click-through rate by average position. So that last search that we did was taking a look at trips to Paris. And so by looking at all of the search queries in the same category, so all the sorts of trips to Paris, and if you click on the next slide, it'll kind of highlight that category. This shows the average click-through rate by position. So even when you get down beyond those first two organic results, you're still getting high single-digit click-through rates. So there's still hundreds of thousands of valuable clicks that are happening here. And if you're not paying attention to how you're appearing in the organic listings, you're missing out on this opportunity. So if we click the next slide, you know, here's another reason to look at this. And if you look at this, this is a mix of kind of the online marketing mix for a selection of our clients that we analyze in our quarterly digital marketing report. And you'll notice kind of in the middle of pack is where you're seeing that non-brand organic search end up from a revenue per channel view. And really kind of regardless of whether you look at the last touch or if we click over to the next slide and look at the first touch, you still see that there is the non-brand organic search is still you know, over 10% of the overall marketing mix of revenue that's coming in. And so you really have to be paying attention to that, whether it's first touch or last touch, no matter how you're allocating that. And what it really comes back to is, you know, when you're looking at whether it's organic or social or no matter what the channel, you have to be understanding, you know, what are your travelers wanting and what are your travelers doing? And so if we look at the next slide, you know, what does your specific audience need, and how can you make sure that you're bringing the searchers to the right page, and that the visibility leads you to help solve your customers' problems, and to solve their business goals. And if you're focused more on the rankings and what's happening on the search page, you've kind of already missed the boat here. You have to be focused on your audience. Why should your audience care about what you're doing, and how are you going to help them, and how are you talking to the right people? And so you really have to make sure that you're letting the data guide your marketing decisions, because at the end of the day, it's your customers telling you what they want through your actions. And so the first thing is, if you're focused on your audience, you have to understand what are your goals, and what are you going to stand for, and how are you going to help your customers. So if we look at the next slide, you have this notion of, what are the key goals of the organization? What are your company's values, and how are you going to distinguish yourself from everyone in the marketplace? And if we look at the next slide, you want to understand why should your customer care about this? What are the problems that you're solving, and what is value about your online presence? And so to get to that point, you need to be able to identify all the different key pieces of your audience members. So one of the activities that we'll walk through, or we think that you should walk through as you're thinking about search and social and how to approach this, is really understand, who are the audiences that you're trying to reach across these channels. What is the issue that they're trying to solve, and why? What does your audience want? And then how are you going to engage that person or that group of people in their conversation and in their need? And then really, how can you motivate them to that next step to do what you'd like them to do? And so, when you start to think about search and social from these perspectives, you somewhat get back a little bit to that old school marketing, or what we might have looked at as more traditional marketing, and developing personas for your customers. And so if you look at the next slide, we'll actually talk about how to develop search personas. So not only understanding who your customer is and really understanding a persona about what they're doing, but taking that to the next level and saying, what are the topics that they're interested in on search? What are the topics that they're going to be paying attention to on the social side? And then from that standpoint, you can actually drill down into the queries, understand what sorts of, how are you going to make sure that your content is being discovered by your audience. So if we look at the next slide, obviously your goal is going to be a booking or conversion, and you're going to be focused on what that conversion is. But what you really want to do is kind of step back and say, how do we work through that entire process? So once you know who your audience is, what is the audience looking for? What are they talking about in social? What is the data pointing to? Is there market research? Is there demographic information that you can use to better understand what they want? Part of that is really understanding where your audience is as well, and it's not just understanding where your audience is from a geographic perspective. It's also understanding how are they coming to you, how are they interacting with you. So from the whether it's on a mobile device or on a tablet, the reality is we see time and time again that the tablets act much more like desktops. Tablets aren't really a mobile device to some extent, because they're usually over 90% of the interactions are typically tethered to Wi-Fi, which means that someone's stationary either at home or in a coffee shop. And because of that, you're going to see that the purchase patterns and behaviors on a tablet device are going to be very different than on a mobile device, when they might be more likely to be last-minute purchases as people enter a city or something like that. And so from there, it's understanding what your audience wants and how you're going to connect them with it. So whether it's using search to find out about what you have available, or connecting with social and getting recommendations, kind of that last touch point is going to be the content on your page and on your website that's going to compel them to a booking. And so on the next slide, when are we going to, how do you start to think about search versus social, and why has some of this come about? And I think that social has become so popular, and it is indeed a great way to get discovered. And the benefit for social, as we'll talk about more in a moment too, is that it's a discovery mechanism where you can the tendency is to want to push information out. And what we'll really find is that as the usage of social increases for an individual or group of individuals, we actually see that people are actually searching more as a result of that. So as people are finding out about new places to go, if they're finding out about new ideas, they're using search to gather more information about this. And so, one kind of the social discovery kind of feeds into search in itself. And so you have to think about how you are curating that information and how these two pieces are intertwined. And if you click to the next slide, and if you think about social media exclusively from that link building value, if you will, for search, I think you're thinking about it. You're thinking about social media in the wrong way. Search and social are very much intertwined, and if you look at search as basically pure customer intent, it's kind of going to be that last opportunity, that last signal you get before someone comes to your site and says, this is what I'm looking for. Basically, they're talking about what's important to them at that moment. And if you take social, then it goes a step beyond that, because social becomes a modifier for, or can become a modifier for, what's happening in search. And social helps you understand what's important to people that I like, or what's important to people like me. So it's that digital word of mouth signal, which can become incredibly powerful. And if we go back to and think about traditional direct marketing, social media becomes very much like that notion of looking for lookalikes in a database. But in this case, you have people who are self-selecting and saying these are people who are connected based on having similar ideas or opinions that I do. And so when you can start to understand this connectedness between these two pieces of digital marketing, you can really start to change behavior, help these groups to discover new opportunities, and change perception, and ultimately help your brand to prosper. And so kind of what is the intersection point that can come from these two? It's looking at that data between search and social, and using that data to inform content. Ultimately, content is kind of what that digital experience is all about, and that's going to be what is actually informing the customer and helping to drive responses. And so as marketers, we're looking at these channels and we're looking at this content, and what we can do is help to drive that discoverability. So from the standpoint of, we're going to be creating something, or in some cases curating something, I think that's something that's important here, is that a lot of times people talk about they have to create new content in order to push out and get that out in their social channels or what have you, and some of the smartest uses of content that I've actually seen are curations of content. So where you're actually taking existing content and formulating it in a way that works better for your audience and helps them to discover and meet their goals and objectives. And so when you talk about this content and trying to make it discoverable, at the end of the day, search engine optimization and social media marketing really are the same as the fundamentals of smart business activity. And so to tie all this together, we have to have an understanding of what's important to make content spread, be effective, and be found by the right people. And so we actually, we consider that there are 4 kind of key criteria for this. And the first piece is that content must be social. So it has to be something that is worthy of being shared. This is one of the reasons why contests work so well from a sharing perspective, because if I'm interested in this contest, interested in the outcome, I want other people either to be interested in my outcome in this event, or I want other people to participate so they have an opportunity to benefit from this as well. On the next slide, we can talk about how content must be searchable. So, you have to make sure it's set up in the right structure. It has to be capable of being discovered. If this content is not put implemented in a way that can be found by the search engines, that it's not going to be, all the social media promotion around it won't be helpful. Content must also be scalable. So it has to be much more than a one-to-one connection, or you have to find a way to move that one-to-one connection to become a one-to-many connection. It has to be able to reach far. And content must be sincere. And this is where I think you find that from sharing cat videos is all good, but really what is that, and how is that specifically related to your business goals as well as your customers' business goals? And when you bring these 4 pieces together, making sure the content is social, searchable, scalable, and sincere, you have people that want to share this and say, look what I found, because it fits my mindset, and it would fit my friends as well. And so when you have content that meets this criteria, how do you make it work? And social becomes all about community management and the ability to understand what people want, and how you can put that information in front of them. Connecting with, helping to connect your audience with others in your audience helps to facilitate that spread of content, and helps to improve discoverability. And that discoverability itself goes back to getting you that data and insights from within the community to understand how you can improve the overall digital visibility of your brand. It really all goes back to content. And part of what digital visibility is looking at link management, which tends to become a dirty word around SEO anymore, but it still remains the case that links are valuable. But you have to think about them from the standpoint of, are you creating links that are designed to help the search engines find something, or are you creating links that are designed to help improve an experience for your customers? If you can't, with any of these social activities, or with any of these with search engine optimization activities, if you can't answer the question of what is this doing for my customer, then you're likely missing the point. And it is more likely that those sorts of activities are going to result in challenging positions with search engines. And so when you look from the community perspective, kind of the natural question that comes up is, what platforms matter, and where should I be? And I think if you look by a specific referral of traffic, that's not necessarily going to help to explain what's happening, or how are people using your content. This is information from Infinigraph, and talking about kind of explains that photos typically have the highest number of interactions per post by very, very large margin. And so how do these things really come together and start to influence one another? And one of the surprising things that I think that is really important now is understanding how the search engines are using signals from different social platforms. One of the most obvious examples of this is Google+. And so even though it might not be a platform that has a large amount of driving a large amount of direct traffic or a large amount of specific engagement with your audience through that channel like you might see in Facebook, Google is using data, using the data from Google Plus to influence the search engine results. So if you look on the next slide, you can see that with the, this is the new, or not new, but this is the Google carousel. You can see that up at the top here, front and center, they're putting information coming from Google Plus as well as Google's Zagat property here into the top of the search results. You can clearly see the influence that social has on search. And really, because Google Plus is important, next slide, because your audience uses Google. And that really makes Google Plus important for you. We can look at the next slide, please. The number of, this is a study done by eMarketer earlier this year, and the number of Google Plus users, Google Plus account holders actually exceeds users on Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest and these other popular platforms. And so Google is using information from these users when they are signed in to their Gmail account, to other Google properties. And if we look at the next slide, they're actually changing search results based on personalizing search results based on what your connections on Google Plus are looking at. So you end up getting personalized images, end up getting personalized results. And what we've seen in this is that, next slide, you actually get typically 15 to 50% higher increase in, an increase in click-through rate, 15 to 50%, for results that are personalized for the users, because it helps those results to actually stand out in the search engine results page. So even though there might not be as much organic real estate, if you're incorporating, if you have a higher base of interaction within Google Plus, you start to get higher click-through rates out of this. One component of how, and we think it's kind of an underutilized method for connecting these pieces together, is authorship. And by connecting Google Plus profiles of authors who are writing content for you, you can start to help improve the discoverability of information. So if we look at the next slide, this is an example of an article written by my colleague. And if we click, it'll highlight the section. Adam Audet wrote this article, Advanced International SEO. So when you search for Advanced International SEO, you get this search engine results page. If you click the link we see there, it takes you to the article. And if you spend a little bit of time there and don't bounce back right away, Google assumes that you've read the article. And then if you do hit the back button, if you click the next slide, and click one more, it takes us to, it actually expands the listing here and shows other articles that have been written by Adam Audet, written on our property or other properties. And what this does is it helps to increase the discoverability of this information. And so, next slide, we can actually typically see with authorship, we've seen increases in 10 to 40% in click-through rate, because what we're doing, if we can click again, are increasing trust. And we have the trust of people knowing Adam and the relationship between Adam, and we're tying this content all together, and so it's making it more relevant for searchers. And so, when we're thinking about this, we want to continue to talk about how we can make frequent updates across platforms, making sure that unique content, whether it's curated or original, is pulled together, and it's going to bring more overall digital visibility across search and social as well. And so the important thing through all of this is to make sure that you're focusing on your customers first, last, and always, by understanding your customers' business goals, tying those together with your customers' goals, tying them together with your business goals, and letting the data from those interactions help to develop content. And by leveraging, making sure that you're leveraging social signals through the search engines to expand your overall not only your overall digital visibility, but also improve the overall utility of your marketing efforts for your customers. So from here, I think we're going to hand it back over to Kevin for a poll.
Brilliant. Thank you very much then, Ryan. So we've had a few questions come in already. Thank you very much for those of you that have. So just a reminder, after Sarah's section of the presentations, we'll be getting to a Q&A for the last 10 minutes or so. And once again, to remind you, so you can submit your questions by just going to the questions tab, which should be on the right-hand side of your dashboard. Right. In the meantime, let's have the third and final poll for our audience here. In your organization, social media's primary role is one of the following: customer service, marketing, or community and engagement. So if you can cast your votes here, please. Seems to be a flurry of people asking questions as well, which is great. Thank you very much. And I think in a moment, Jean, if we can have those results up. Okay, so exactly half, 50% say its primary role is for community and engagement, just 7% for customer service, and 44% for marketing. So we may well get to discussing that in the Q&A. So thank you very much, everybody, for voting. And at this stage, I'm going to hand over to Sarah Kennedy Ellis, who I said earlier is a director at Sabre Labs. She's in, of course, in Southlake in Texas today, also in the US. So good morning to you, Sarah, and looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Great. Thanks, Kevin, and thanks so much, Ryan. Are you guys actually getting that feedback?
You're fine. Please carry on.
Okay. So overall, we've really covered a lot of great points. I think Ryan, especially specifically related to convergence of social and search. And what I wanted to spend just a couple minutes on were some of the specific examples that we can dive into a little bit more in the travel context. And beyond that, just a couple of tips and takeaways that is based on a lot of the research and the work that we've seen at Sabre and some of our work over the last couple of years in social and travel. So when we really think about relationships that scale, which is kind of the theme of my section of this presentation, we're really trying to focus on interactions that aren't just singular in nature in a specific channel, but that can scale across multiple channels, data sources, and interaction types. And that covers kind of the entire ecosystem of search and social and marketing. So the slide you see now is one that highlights just a couple of statistics from Instagram that you guys, I'm sure, are all at least a little bit familiar with. But this is really a channel where travel can shine, and I wanted to use that as just one example. We could spend a month talking about all of the opportunities for travel and social, but this specific channel, just because of its visually rich nature, is really ripe with opportunity, and it's really underutilized to date by a lot of travel brands. But overall, with all of the data you see here, with a lot of the photos that have been shared, when you get into the travel-specific statistics, just even looking at hashtags across Instagram, we see that there's over 100 million that are specifically related to travel or vacation or holidays. Beach today has over 25 million photos that have been tagged. Vacations and holidays total 15 million. Even flight attendants as a hashtag is one that's gotten over 100,000 photo posts. And I can only imagine some of those aren't exactly positive, but they're really great opportunities we've seen for airlines to start to get engaged in a more personalized, genuine, transparent way with a lot of their customers. And so we'll look at a couple examples there, as well as in the hospitality space, but then also in the small business space as well. So Jean, if you'll move on to the next slide. What we'll see here is just a couple of snapshots of examples of some of the brands that are really doing a pretty powerful job of interacting with their customers, their fans, and their followers. And of course, Virgin is notorious for being a brand that does this very well, but they're also extending that from their offline success into, of course, the digital marketing space. So they've done a lot of really interesting things to help not only their social brand and the engagement that they drive with users in the social context, but because they are you can see here it's a campaign they've actually launched in partnership with the San Francisco Giants and Lucille, their mascot. And what they've done is, I think the question they asked people was, can you shake it like Lucille? And so they have, you put kind of a picture on Instagram and hashtag it with the hashtag for their campaign, and it started to kind of pick up a following, of course, within Instagram. But even more broadly, what they're doing is they're tying their brand with other brands that people have emotional ties to. And so they're really building a unique relationship from an emotional perspective, but also one that scales across organic search results. So what we're starting to see now is an overlap whenever people are looking for Lucille or any kind of information related to the mascot of the San Francisco Giants. Virgin is starting to pop up in organic search results, and it's really interesting to kind of see that grow through this campaign. So they're one example, and there's a lot of airlines. Southwest is actually the one that has the largest following today on Instagram, but Virgin's got 25,000 followers, which is really relatively small when you think about the comparison to Twitter and how much of a following and investment has been made socially by airlines there. So we're only just starting to see airlines tap the opportunity here within the photo sharing context. So at the bottom of this slide is Four Seasons, and they're another brand that in the hospitality space has really done some powerful things with photo sharing. So what they've got is an account that actually you can see in the images that are even on this slide. These are just randomly selected from their account. They're actually taking the power of the beauty of the destinations that surround their resorts without actually explicitly taking pictures of their resorts to try and really create an experience that users can feel like they're a part of, whether they're at home watching it from their couch or scrolling through their Instagram feed while they're standing in line at the grocery store. But they're doing this in a way that's starting to really engage users visually. And again, that's what makes any kind of photo sharing opportunity in social really powerful. And as search engines start to integrate even more intelligence around image-based search and visual search, we're really going to start to see the overlap in the value of these brands getting a lot more photos out there about their properties that have metadata associated with it in those search results. So Jean, if you'll move on to the next slide. So this is just a quick example as we take a look at even smaller businesses in travel and even really just personal and individual entities who are out there and are engaging on, in our example for Instagram, we've seen a lot. And one thing that's really surprised us in our research at Sabre is that while airlines really lagged behind in terms of investing time and energy into Instagram, who did were a lot of their crew members and a lot of their flight attendants and pilots and even maintenance and ground crew that actually started posting some really incredible images, because these people have access to some of the places that no one else in the world does visually. And so there you will find actually across Instagram, it's really fun to actually go start searching for it. AV Geek is usually the hashtag that's used. But what you'll find is there's a ton of these flight attendants that are really sharing some of the coolest photos that I've really seen because they can have access to these places that none of us really can. The other interesting thing is that because of that, there's over 1 million people that are employed by airlines or have some kind of relationship with airlines or airports, 1 million people following accounts that actually post photos in that context. And so what actually has happened is the airlines brands have become known based on what their crew members and what their pilots have posted on their personal accounts before they've actually been formally and officially managed by the airlines brand. So it's really interesting to see that kind of take precedence. And also you can kind of see here there's a couple of funny pictures actually on this one particular agent's account. And he's got a lot of followers and he's pretty entertaining, but it kind of gives you insight into what the agents are really thinking. So it can be good and bad in the context of building your brand and making your customers feel like they're really valuable to you in some ways. But the other cool thing too, in the bottom right hand corner, you can see a guy who's a pilot. I won't say what airline because don't want to get him in trouble, but it's really interesting because he's now, he posted a ton of pictures from inside of the cockpit, but he actually took an Instagram video taking off the other day. I don't know what airport it was, but it's one of the most unique perspectives that no one really ever gets to see. Granted, I'm not sure we want to be on a plane where the pilot is videoing his Instagram for his Instagram account while he's taking off, but he was, and it created a really interesting and engaging graphic that a lot of people started to interact with within an hour of him posting. And then finally, in the bottom left-hand corner, you see Stacy Small. If you've ever heard me present before, you've heard me mention her name. She's pretty incredible in terms of what she's been able to do as an individual small business owner marketing her travel business. So she's someone who she was actually awarded the most innovative travel agent of the year by Virtuoso this year. And she has nearly 50,000 followers on Twitter just as an individual. And she just started in the last year really getting engaged in Instagram, and it's become a powerful way for her to build her brand and her business also. So next slide. So as we've seen, and as Ryan mentioned, and he's dead on, that social and search really are increasingly becoming one. And so as you guys have probably all at least played around with a little bit, when Facebook launched their social graph search recently, it really showed us what happens when a truly social platform builds search on top of itself, whereas Google is really a search platform that has built social on top of its core value proposition. And it's yet to be determined, and I don't think anyone can really predict who's going to ultimately, quote, win based on however they define success. But what we are seeing is really some new paradigms being explored within the Facebook kind of people-powered search. And so the example here on the left side you'll see is just what happens whenever you click in the top of the search box on Facebook to ask places my friends have visited. You can segment by hotel, you can segment by a lot of other things, landmarks, etc. And it's really going to be interesting to see how they enable that in a more powerful way throughout the platform. And then on the right was just a more recent example. There's a lot of your daily interaction on Instagram actually involves search. It's something that they've also built on kind of as an afterthought. It was one of the least exciting functions on Instagram when they launched, and they've started to expand the capabilities there because a lot of people actually search for just relevant news, current events. And if you were unfortunate enough to have to witness the Miley Cyrus debacle on the VMAs on Sunday night, you'll know that there were over 300,000 tweets were posted every minute, and there was a ton of just buzz around the audience's reaction. And so there's a lot of interesting data that's out there now on Instagram that was kind of making fun of the event, as well as Will Smith and his family's alleged reaction. The next slide, please. So as I mentioned, Google's kind of done the reverse, where they've really, obviously they've built an incredibly powerful search engine, and on top of that, they've really forced the issue to be great at social. So as we've seen, and as Ryan mentioned, even with tours and activities, the same thing's happening with hotels, with flights, etc. But what really hit the nail on the head is that we really need to be aware of the fact that Google's power does impact how you, and specifically your hotel and your activity or tour, should be investing in Google+. Whether you like it or not, whether you use it or not, you really don't have a choice. You need to be present there, and that's kind of what they're counting on. So what they've done at the top, as you can see in this example, there are just, I'm searching for hotels in Chicago, and there's a ton of very large brands that are noticeably missing in the first set of results. And that's because they're not necessarily investing as much in Google+. And so some of the smaller boutique hotels that have really taken the time to get +1s added to their account and have really made all of their content as shareable as possible, which is one of the things that influences the algorithm most, is removing all barriers to sharing. They're actually showing up in a higher spot organically than what some of the other bigger brands are that definitely have a longer history of reviews and more content across the web than what an individual boutique hotel might. So next slide. So with that, I just wanted to leave you guys with 3 tips, and we'll get into the Q&A. But as again Ryan mentioned, he's right, engagement is increasingly everything. You've really got to make sure that your brand is out there and engaged. You've got to move from the idea that social is valuable, but it's still in this basic format, and it's begun to really be powered by search. And social itself also, in reverse, as Ryan mentioned, it's driving a lot of actual search activity, but what it's also doing is helping inform you as marketers to be more intelligent, not only to be bidding on keywords and marketing based on those, but to learn the language that your followers and your fans speak on a daily basis. And that's what they're doing across all of their social networks. So that enables you to make more intelligent decisions about how you do market through search engines. The second is, again, where social and search converge, you really should be paying attention. It's going to continue to be more and more powerful, and that's something that I think we will, in the next few years, not refer to them as 2 separate entities. And then finally, for big companies, social really is only as powerful as the search integration that exists, because a recent study that was done showed that 10 out of 10 questions across a variety of types of questions, such as when was Eleanor Roosevelt's birthday, where should I go eat when I visit this different city that I've never been to, all of these questions, people still by default start at a search engine. So that's something that's still surprising, and that means we're still answering specific questions instead of having an open mind in terms of discovery. So again, that just means social is still only going to be as powerful as the search integration that exists until that changes. And for small, again, it's how you can compete. So social is really still the reason they can compete in a world that's dominated by quite extensive search marketing. So finally, the last slide. So just as a reiteration, just where the data exists from relationships that can scale across multiple channels, where you can really engage with your users and drive those relationships that are real and genuine, there should your heart and your budget be also. So with that, I will turn it back over to Kevin to start Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Food for thought, everybody, as always. we've had a flurry of questions come in. Now, if we don't get to one of your particular questions, hands up now. We do apologise, but what we will do is take a note of every question that's come in, and we'll get these guys to answer them and come back to you directly if they're able to. So, right, first of all, Ryan, under the broad kind of heading of the webinar, and before we get to some specific questions, I just wondered if, in the grand scheme of things, where do you rank the travel industry as a whole against other verticals in terms of getting it into, in inverted commas, this marriage of search and social?
Oh gosh, Kevin, I don't want to get myself in trouble. I think that the travel industry is so good at looking at so much data, and it's so impressive, especially when you look at CRM and back-end systems. And I think that I do think that travel lags behind some of the other verticals a little bit. One of the things that I've been really excited to see in probably about the past maybe 18 months is a lot more integration in. So I go to a lot of travel events as well as retail events, and I've seen a lot more cross-pollination where travel companies, airlines, hoteliers are attending shows like shop.org and National Retail Federation shows, and vice versa. And I think that I actually think that retail is a little bit ahead of travel in this aspect, and I think travel does a reasonable job, but I think they have a lot to learn from retail, because at the end of the day, you're going after you're talking to the same customer. And so some of the strategies that work for retail can be adopted and have the potential to work for travel as well.
Okay, and Sarah, as someone who works within the industry, would you broadly agree with Ryan or disagree?
I would, yeah. I mean, I think we're notorious, and we all self-admittedly know that the industry that we're in typically does lag behind, but that's also because we learn a lot from watching other industries, and especially retail is one that we take a page out of their book often, and I think it's actually in this case been quite valuable to have a lot of brands do a lot of drastic and risky things in other industries that we've all been able to learn from. So it's kind of the one time that being a little bit of a laggard in terms of our investment in this space has actually probably been valuable.
Okay, Ryan. So we're going to try and get into some of these questions now. So a question regarding some of your early slides around personas, first of all. So attendee asks, besides registered users with established profiles, such as corporate travelers, loyalty program members, how can personas be assigned to online travel shoppers, saved, and then used to provide targeted search results the next time that they shop at the same site? So I guess is it a cookie question? Is it more cerebral than that?
Yeah, I think the way I was thinking about it is a little bit more cerebral than that. So it's basically stepping back and talking with all the members on your team and trying to understand how do you group these people together. I think one of the things that's important here is that there is in search there is such a tendency in search specifically to focus on a keyword or something like that, and really it's about these concepts that you're trying to get connected for, and who are you trying to connect with those concepts with. And so if it's being the low cost provider of airfare, and your goal in who are you trying to reach? Are you trying to do that for business travelers? Are you trying to do that for vacation seekers? And that's kind of the way that I was thinking about it. I think that the data absolutely, the profile data that you have can absolutely be used to influence that, but I think you definitely have to look more broadly if you want to make sure that you're capturing everybody.
Okay, and the same person anticipated that they would need a follow-up question, and here it is. It says, can the same traveller and shopper actually have multiple personas depending on the purpose of their trip? And indeed, how would you therefore go about it, given that there may be a father shopping for a family vacation, and then the same person shopping for a trip with friends that are have a different interest and desires? I mean, how do you go about having multiple kind of needs and requirements for the same person?
Sure, and you're exactly right. That any individual can fit multiple personas, and so you want to think about those different personas as not the individual stepping across personas, but the personas as their own kind of entity. And so you're creating content and thinking about the experience that you're delivering for that persona. And so if that father steps into the vacation role or steps into the business traveler role, you're going to have content that speaks to them, and you're going to have an experience that helps them to meet their goals no matter kind of where they are.
Okay, right. Question for you, Sarah. Obviously, we're discussing things about photos and cat pictures and things like that. Paul in Ireland asks, are there any stats that are to show the, to track bookings that originate from Instagram-originated searches? Has there anyone done any research into that, or is it all anecdotal? Where are we on actually working out the ROI, that dreaded word ROI on Instagram?
Yeah, I haven't seen any recent statistics on that. I know in general there's a lot of research that's been done, of course, across social sharing that has led to an increase in conversions. I know that Facebook, which of course owns Instagram, would say, I think their data shows currently, or at least the most recent data they've put out, says that 52% of people or users on Facebook have been inspired to book a trip based on viewing someone else's vacation photo, which certainly could have been sourced directly from Facebook and or Instagram. So I would say that's probably the most relevant statistic we have that would apply there.
Okay, and another one of the photo-related questions, maybe we just have lots of cat fans in the industry, I don't know. The slide on photos receiving the most interaction, is that just an artifact of there more photos being shared out there, or can you actually say something about interactions per asset? And that's for either of you, Ryan or Sarah.
Yeah, the data that I shared, at least what I was looking at, that's actually interactions per asset, not account of the assets that are out there. So yeah, they tend to have higher levels of interaction. I think gets back to that shareability issue, and that piece of content is that it has to be social if you want it to move.
Okay, another final question for this stage on photos. Robert asks, he likes the fact that you mentioned the images get the highest amount of engagement. Did you, Ryan, have an estimate of how well the travel industry is actually optimizing images for search? Big difference between just posting pictures, but actually optimizing them. In his opinion, he says it appears to be a relatively low percentage, but what's your view?
Yeah, I think that, in general, I think that the benefit here is that Google's getting better and better at actually understanding what images are. And so that yes, there are ways that you can optimize images, and I think that there's always less optimization being done than should be. But I think on the plus side here is I think that the search engine's technology is catching up so they can better understand what's happening in those photos.
Okay, I'm trying to get through these as quickly as I can. We did have so many come in. So a question from Tom for you, Sarah. He said on one of your slides you could see the Virtuoso logo. Can you talk maybe to how does the luxury sector differ from the mass market in terms of social engagement? Is it more or less? Is it about the same? Are there any kind of techniques that are done differently?
Well, I think it depends on channel, and I think what we've seen, luxury brands actually are the ones that clearly don't have to go to too much effort to have photos that are rich and engaging and that people want to positively interact with. So they've got it a little easier, to be frank. But the other thing that's interesting is to see how I think some of the more, and I won't call them economy brands, but just brands that are less luxury focused, those are the ones that are also really capitalizing in terms of customer service. And I was actually surprised by the poll numbers to show that only 7% of people were investing in that context. But I think that's where truly still a lot of great opportunity resides. And I think it's interesting because we did some studies around what is the most kind of positive place that people interact or share the most positive or sentiment about a brand, and that was happening through Instagram as compared to Facebook and not Facebook, but Foursquare as well as Twitter. But what we're starting to see is that people are actually trying to use Instagram now also for customer service to interact with an airline, and that's getting interesting to kind of watch that dynamic play out and how they're managing it.
Okay, it's a question from Evan, and this one is for you, I think, Ryan. He says he's having trouble gaining traction on a client's Google Plus pages. It's for a large outfitter's guide business. Any suggestions beyond rich daily content? Should he be using hashtags? Should be mass following people? And are there any kind of metrics like Facebook Insights for Google Plus? That last element was also asked by someone else talking about, is Google Plus going to provide some kind of rich analytics so that people can actually understand a little bit about how effective their activity is?
Yes, there's, and the name of the Google provided tool is slipping my mind right at the moment, but there is something, and I can follow up, Kevin, with that, with you or with those people
Sure.
on the analytics side. But I think that it kind of goes back to, you know, when you're talking about what the content you are creating, is it well aligned with the audience's needs, not just the advertiser's needs. And I think that's pretty key. I think that often marketers get into a slippery slope of running promotions or pushing information out rather than engaging, and I think that's very important as well on the plus side.
Okay, and Melody asks now, how important, and I suspect you're going to say yes because a large portion of your presentation was talking about Google+, but you know, she asks, you know, how important is it to be active on Google+, especially since she's seen businesses rank on the Google carousel without having any activity at all on Google+, or is that just the other elements of search ensuring that those images, for example, are featuring up on the carousels?
Yeah, my understanding is the carousel also includes Zagat information, so that may be where some of that's coming from as well. I think that it's directly related to how active your audience is on Google+, and by active I don't necessarily mean participating in conversations, but how likely are they to be signed in. One way, you know, perhaps a judge of what that might be is if you look at Google Analytics and you have a high percentage of not provided queries, and so Google in the organic search, Google won't share refer information if your users are logged in. And so if you have a high percentage of not provided queries, that probably means you have a high percentage of users that are logged in when they're doing searches. So that might tell you something about your Google Plus metric usage.
Yeah. Okay, and as soon as you mentioned that analytics thing a couple of moments ago, we've had a few people say, please, 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 can you share the name of that tool? So everybody, we will make sure that when we post the slides and the recording up later, that we'll mention the name of that tool so that you can all go off and play with it. So final question really then, and this comes from Christina in the US. And she says, you know, are there any best practices or consideration with regards to retargeting based on social intent that can be surmised from social and search together? You know, in other words, how does all the social help inform retargeting? We've had a lot of discussion on Tnooz over the last year and a half or so about retargeting. I haven't heard it mentioned so far on this presentation specifically, but Ryan, to those points about retargeting, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that absolutely you can use search data in that way. We've seen great success on the you know, when you start talking about Facebook Exchange and how you're using that information and using display targeting there, you can actually retarget based on, there's a retargeting component within search as well. So if people have been to your site, you can treat them differently if they're doing the same type of search or if they're doing a different search on what they've seen on your site. So there are different levels of retargeting that you can do, and absolutely the more you can do to echo your customers or your audience's sentiments and say, I'm paying attention to what you're looking for, you're going to get better engagement out of that.
Okay, and the last question from me, which is kind of related, but it's much more of a crystal ball gazing one. Do either of you sense that at some point Facebook is going to change to the extent that it will beef up its search to become more natural search and start indexing things like that? You know, there's been talk every now and again about Facebook getting into, dare I say, traditional search. Is that something you anticipate, or do you think that Facebook will just do it in its own way through the knowledge graph and the social graph?
I think, you know, one of the things I think that has to happen in order for that to really take hold is, and I think Facebook would like that, I think that consumer behavior needs to change a little bit. One of the things that we're seeing in the search traffic that we currently have coming through Facebook, it's you're getting some occasional local listings being evaluated. So I would say probably travel more over than some other industries that search has more value in Facebook. But right now, consumers are just not using Facebook search function like they do the Google or Bing or other search engines.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, what's interesting, I think Facebook, the graph search is truly a new way entirely of searching. It's fundamentally different than anything we've actually done before, whereas Google Plus is not really a new way of networking. So it's going to be interesting to see how Facebook really has done some incredibly innovative things with search. They're not a search company, but they've also made some statements that imply they're becoming one. And so I just will be fascinated to see. I think it's going to be interesting to see who they partner with, because I think that will continue, and that will probably indicate to us where they're going to head and how they're going to grow with search, and how big of a focus that will be.
Okay, and briefly then, last word goes to you, Ryan. Do you suspect or fear that we'll be having these same types of conversations in 2 years' time, or do you think the travel industry, will have moved on sufficiently?
I think that you'll be having similar conversations. I think it'll be the conversations will be more advanced, and we'll be talking about how people are using their glasses, watches, cars to book travel rather than phones, tablets, and desktops. Maybe not quite in 2 years, but you kind of get where that's going.
Okay, right. So final from me then. Thank you very much to everybody for tuning in today. Apologies to those that didn't get their question answered, but I have made a record of all of them, and we'll be passing these on to our panel this afternoon, and hopefully they'll get back to you with an answer at some point. So just goes for me to say thank you very much to Sarah in Texas and to Ryan in Virginia for joining us, and obviously a special thank you to RKG for partnering with Tnooz for this particular webinar. We thank them greatly. Quick reminder, recording and all the slides will be up on tnooz.com within the next 10 hours or so, and thank you very much as always for everybody for listening, and we'll catch you on tnooz.com very soon. Thanks, bye.
The organizer has ended the session, and this